Welcome to the Big Bad Marketing Podcast. I'm Janae.
And I am Brooke, and we are two entrepreneurs jumping headfirst into building a business.
We're marketers and we're content creators at heart. And in this podcast, we help small business owners learn how to play big with their marketing efforts, even on a small business budget.
If you're ready to make big bad moves in your professional life, this podcast is for you. Welcome to episode 17, Content Pacing, all about how frequently you should be posting on content channels. For the average small business owner, they want to create content, right? They know they need to create content, whether that's email, social media posts, blog posts, podcasts, whatever it may be. They're trying to keep up with competitors and they think that they need to be posting or creating content on every platform every day. But what is the reality of that? How frequently do you actually need to post content to be seen by your audience and to be promoted within the algorithms of certain channels? Thoughts, Janae?
Ooh, actually, I have a pokey point here, like a hot thought, which is I think if you make quality content and you're posting it not even that often, that's gonna boost you up on the algorithms way more than if you're just like guerrilla marketing, send it on every channel all the time, do it, do it, do it. Right. That just gets annoying.
Yeah, it really is total quantity over quality, quality over quantity. Like we obviously are always going to recommend that you take a little bit more time and post a fewer times with really high quality, valuable content that your audience is going to see it and think, wow, they gave that to me for free. That was amazing. What, like, why wouldn't I want to do business with them, right?
Yes, imagine if I paid them what they could do for my business.
Right. Yeah. And
Hmm.
so a big thing for me when it comes to content pacing. So years ago, I decided to start a blog. Once I was writing on that blog a couple times a week, I thought, I'm going to get on Instagram. Had never been on Instagram before in my life. I said, I'm just going to do Instagram and I'm going to jump in. And people post a lot on Instagram. So that's what I'm going to do. And so I started posting like a couple times a week was my goal, just like 3 times a week. I did this for a couple days and I got so burnt out on just trying to figure out what to post, on what kind of engagement I was getting, on just as I went through my day, I'm looking for things that I could tell a story about or interesting things to do. Needless to say, I went in with zero strategy, zero direction on any of
Mm.
it. And I just decided to jump in and thought the answer was just to post as much as was feasibly possible. And then about a week later, I deleted my Instagram because it was way too much.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to play a game to guess what the topic of this blog and Instagram channel was. Was it about dogs?
No, that might have been a lot easier though.
Was it about homemade tortillas?
Also, no, but you're getting a lot closer.
Okay, cooking in general? Was it a
It,
cooking piece?
it's some healthy cooking. It was more broad, wellness, lifestyle, doing things that are healthy, working out, eating well, which are all still things that I am incredibly passionate about and would love to talk to anyone that desires to do that.
Okay, so the story, maybe it's like a little bit of a sad story because of all that effort you put in, and then now it's just nowhere. But it is a very common story. I've been there too. I did the same thing for yoga. Like it maybe lasted a little bit longer than that, but it never gained enough traction for me to be like, this is worthwhile. And it's frustrating when I look around on just the internet at large and I see so many channels like that, whether that's literal like YouTube channels or web pages where there are lifestyle and recipe and wellness and all this stuff in one. And they're just doing something. They have this like magic secret and it's working. And I think our goal here is to help people bridge that gap between, like, okay, how can I do this in a consistent, meaningful, useful way where it actually finds success instead of turning into this sad story, which I think unfortunately it does for a lot of small business owners who just like go ham, go really hard to make it happen and show up. And then it kind of falls off, you burn out and it doesn't really work and no one's looking.
Yeah, and I think there is a magic to longevity And that really comes back to how can you pace the publishing of your content in a way that aligns with your ability to create it and
Hmm.
also aligns with your ability to sort of assess it and figure out what works. So, we have an entire episode on social media strategy and the importance of that and ways that you can develop your strategy. So, we won't spend a whole lot of time on that in this episode. But one of the things that you really need to consider is with that strategy, who is going to be creating the content for these platforms? Who's going to be posting the content? Because if it's just you, small business owner, that looks a lot different than if you have, say, an intern or a team of people that could be responsible for this.
Yes, actually, while we were talking before, it was striking me that a huge business can have multiple campaigns on multiple channels and post sometimes multiple times a day because there are tens of hundreds of who knows how many people working on each of these. So when we compare our small business to a huge business and we're like, but look, they have 10 posts a week. Like, yes. And in time, if you keep building your business, you will get there. But for now, slow, steady wins the race here. And good quality, as you mentioned, Brooke, like is always going to be what we suggest over like quick churn and burn.
Yeah. So the big question that I would encourage you, the individual small business owner who's planning to do this all yourself, is how many posts and how many pieces of content can you realistically create in a week or a month and still add value for your audience? So that is going to look a little different based on the channels because a post for Instagram or Facebook is likely going to take you far less time than creating, say, a long form blog. But just thinking generally about how much time you can realistically devote to this and let that be where you start to consider your content pacing, as opposed to saying, I think I need to post on Instagram 5 times a week and then trying to back yourself into creating the content to fill that need.
Sure. Or I also find something that happens is like small business owners really hyped up and passionate. So they just go on their phone and like push something out really quickly. And it's not, there's no rhyme or reason. The post today has nothing to do with the post tomorrow, which in general terms, fine. But what I'm getting at is there's no underlying strategy. So again, it's always going to come back to have a strategy in place. And then another piece here is be careful not to underestimate how long content creation takes, especially if you're a perfectionist like Brooke and I tend to be. Like, you might want to go over it a ton of times or revise or realize something's missing, or if you get another set of eyes on it, you make a big change. So the advice here, as you're really mapping out how many you can feasibly do, is like do it a few times. Get in Canva, start writing out posts, really get a sense of how long this takes you. Set a timer if you need to. But it can take, especially if you're making really complex pieces with multiple pages or graphics or a video, take the time to figure out how long it takes.
That is such brilliant advice because there have been so many times where I make my to-do list in the morning, and sometimes I will assign a time value thinking, I'm going to work for 7 hours today. This is going to take me a half hour. This is going to take me an hour. And I sort of build my day around that. And then I find that when I get into something, just my own proofreading, my own running it through Grammarly, my own reading it out loud to myself can double or even triple the time that it takes that I thought it took for a task. So that is so real. And I love the advice of do this a couple times so that you have legitimately understood how long it's going to take.
Sure. And the process will always ebb and flow in time because as you're mentioning that, I'm like, okay, always when I'm writing a blog article, I'll get to like 75, 80% done with the piece. And I'm like, okay, I'm almost done. But then it's still, I got to tack on another hour or two to finish all the editing, revisions, Grammarly, everything you just mentioned. So it's very deceptive, this process, the content creation process. And then on top of that, when you create the first few pieces, it probably will take longer than after you've gotten in the habit of it. And that's great. That means you're streamlining. Maybe as you're moving through general work, you're like, oh, this will make a great topic for a post. And so you have less time in like the ideation phase or kind of dredging up pieces. But the point is, as you go, the process likely will take less time, and that's good. But as you're mapping out how long it takes, it's better to use that larger estimation of time than slim it down too much. And then you've blown through your 37 minutes too quickly and you don't have anything done.
Yes. And as you're saying that, the formatting piece of it within these platforms is also something that's time consuming that people don't consider. So, okay, I have the image, I have what I think I want to say, but then also I need to hashtag it. Or in the case of a blog post, I need to put this into Squarespace, WordPress. I need to format the headings appropriately. I need to include imagery throughout. I need to optimize it for SEO and make sure that I have my SEO title and description. And that process of just the formatting can add on 30 minutes or more, depending on the platform. And like you said, in time, that will decrease, but only to a certain point, right? It still is going to take me 10 to 15 minutes to format my blog post in Squarespace. So when we make the blogs for these episodes, say it takes us an hour, hour and a half to write the content, that formatting is always going to add about 15 more minutes before we can actually get it over the line to publish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If and then if I'm going to speak for myself, but if you're like me, I'm like, oh, let me check what this button does and let me test this out. And oh, wait, I want to change that now that I'm looking at it. And it always ends up taking much longer, which is okay. Like, don't be hard on yourself about how long it takes, but be realistic.
Yeah. So let's go through a few different types of content and sort of give some general parameters on content pacing based on the platform. So let's start with email. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so this is going to depend a lot on the type of business you have and what your product or service is, because I've mentioned this so many times on our podcast already, but I receive emails from the water filter company, which they're doing a great job like tracking. Okay, it's been 6 months. It's literally now is the time that you need to order your new one, or should I say 5 months before, so that in month six, the new one's here and it's ready. Like they're doing a great job of that. But if they were to email me once or twice a week or twice a month, I'd be like, okay, fam, like that's a lot. So really think about your product or your service and the buyer's journey and how often your customer realistically needs to hear from you to make a purchase. But depending on also the urgency. So if you're coming out with a new product or you have a new service that you're offering or a promotion, right? That would be a great time to send out an additional email and let people know reach out to your past customers, let them know something they bought is now on sale, stuff like that. So I'm going to say this is it, our ongoing answer to many of these questions, it depends with email. I'd say you can get by with twice a month if you're just doing ongoing emails. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it always depends on the intent of the email and the type of business that you're running, but we're all now at this point probably receiving a lot of these weekly update sort of emails. So I am huge into listening to podcasts. So there are a lot of podcasts that I follow where I'll get this sort of weekly roundup of, things that they're interested in or an update of the podcasts that have come out this week or the articles that have been published. And I really enjoy those. I think for me, a weekly cadence feels really appropriate for that sort of, hey, here's what's new if you have a following like that. But then if you are promoting a particular product or a service, there's going to be certain times, especially seasonally, like around the holiday time, where you're probably going to bump it up a little bit because you're really trying to get in front of people and drive them to that thing. So, email definitely depends, but if you are just trying to sort of maintain that connection and that engagement with your email list, I think once a week could be a really appropriate cadence.
Sure. And that's also striking me that go to our website and download our annual marketing calendar. And this will really help you map out different seasonality or promo and new product service release trends for your business so that you can get ahead of that and not wait until the day of to be like, oh, dang, I really need to get this email together and send it out, right? Get ahead of that. That's a lot of how content pacing is going to behoove you is if you have a plan in advance instead of waiting till today.
Oh, yeah. It always comes back to that calendar and your overarching strategy. And obviously, if you are interested in having someone help you develop that strategy, we are here for you. Um, Holler
Bing,
at
bing,
us.
bing.
Bing, bing, bing. Big bad marketing. All right. So let's move down to blog posts. So, blog posts obviously going to be a little bit of a heavier lift in that development, but do I need to be posting a blog every day, every few days, once a month? I mean, what makes sense here?
Drum roll, please. It depends. So this is going to be, I think, most largely impacted by how much value your blog drives. If your blogs are like quick answers to frequently asked questions or user queries, and you can create really high quality pieces that are, let's say, under 800 words in a short amount of time, go for it. Post them every day. Like, power to you, especially if you're doing a good job with your SEO. Shout out to our last um, or one of our podcast episodes about business SEO for small business owners, like how to do it. You can get a ton of information there. But if you're writing these huge exposés or like the equivalent of a white paper on a topic, maybe you don't want to do that every day or every week, right? Maybe a better pace for that is once monthly. So it's really about assessing the type of content you're going to be putting out, considering how long it's going to take you to create in a really good quality way, and then using that information to decide how frequently you should be doing it. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely. And that once a month cadence, like you said, for that longer form content where you're going to use that to promote through other channels, that's going to be a really evergreen, valuable piece of content that you're going to use to drive traffic to your website, that you're going to use to engage your audience. I think once a month is a fine cadence. And some people hear that and think that's not enough. I can't just be posting once a month. That's never going to do anything. But 12 really high quality, in depth blog posts per year, that's going to be great for your business. And that's going to give you plenty of fodder to use on other platforms and to help engage
Oh,
your audience.
upcycle.
Yeah.
Yes. And okay, I'm thinking of during COVID, how many of my clients and the businesses I was working with were like quick to get on the what about COVID angle for whatever their product or service was. And they put a huge push on creating content for that. Okay. And yes, at the time, like that's important. And there was a lot of search volume around it, and that's fine. But now it's not paying off at all, right? Like there's no evergreen quality of that type of content. So it's a really fine line here between understanding what is the long term benefit of a piece of content for your website, for your social media, etc., and like what's going to be trendy content, which is also very valuable. So you have to weigh it against your own scale of your industry, of your products and services against your competitors, and make sure that it's all sort of within reason for you.
Yes, and really finding that balance of trendier, possibly short-term content versus evergreen content. And we'll use that phrase a lot, just meaning a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, this is still going to be relevant for my audience and it's still going to be helpful. Yes, there might be something that goes out of date, some kind of data points that I need to go in and update every year or so, but it's still going to remain relevant over time.
So, in terms of what we're doing as a model and an example of this, like we are explaining actually for the SEO piece, we have this really in depth long form content guide on how to do SEO for your small business. It's on our blog site, so go check it out. But the point is, that was a worthwhile piece to put in effort and long amount, like long time effort, resources, and energy into thinking about, because that's going to be relevant for a long time to come, right? SEO is not going anywhere. But where the caveat is like we're going to have to go in periodically and make updates to that piece and make sure it's still accurate and relevant. But it would not necessarily behoove us to be like, let's make a long form piece of content explaining how to make this trendy reel that people are doing where they're comparing something side by side with two different videos. That's going to come and go, and that's going to wash out, and no one's ever going to look at that again. So, really thinking about it in terms of your business, your customers, all of that.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point with content pacing is with these certain platforms, you also need to consider updates. So the blog probably being the prime example of that. It's okay, I can publish a blog once a week, but a year from now, when I have 52 blogs, how much time am I going to spend going back through and updating them? So at a certain point, updating content needs to become part of that strategy. And maybe that alters your content pacing. And maybe you sort of pull back on new content creation a little bit in order to facilitate that update of the existing content.
Hmm. And I'm thinking of that quantity, and I'm thinking about a small business owner and how you mentioned like there's this fraction of people who are like, I really need to post, I really need to create, like I really need to put stuff out. And that is true. And I know where we were in big bad agency land before this, a lot of people were coming through with, we need 30 new blog posts a month. And these are, huge companies and corporations, and that's fine. But at some point, the content is getting lost and you cannot even keep up with what's there, of how to link it together. So, what's your strategy for making sure all of your content makes sense with each other? And as always, it's just going to be better for you to put in more effort and make a piece that really nails it than make five extra pieces instead.
Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe this warrants a future episode on sort of ongoing content management and what types of things you'll want to look for, because in prior agency land, there were clients that came to us and said, I now have these hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of content. I need help just figuring out, is it duplicated? When should I update it? Is it relevant? Should I, redirect it to another post? And they really did at a certain point lose track of it. So, blog posts are going to be sort of a unique beast, and we'll kind of have to manage that separately. Social media and the nature of that is sort of here today, gone tomorrow. So if you did a duplicate social media post 6 months from now, it's highly likely that nobody is going to notice that. And it's not problematic because you don't need to go back to that first post and update it. You can just post again. So it really is
Mm,
this difference in channels that becomes important.
sure. And that's where I think we run into a lot of funny business with small business owners who are like, yeah, just put the same thing up everywhere. I made this blog, just like share it everywhere. There are effective ways to upcycle your content. We were alluding to this before, to recycle. So you put effort into your blog. I think you have a great acronym for this, Brooke. Yeah.
Cope, create once, publish everywhere.
Yes, but that is not to say write a blog and then just like take a picture of it and post it somewhere, or copy all of the text from the blog and put it into your caption, right? The idea here is to reformat and pull the pieces of your long form piece, your blog, right? So that it makes sense for a different channel and appeals to the people who are hanging out on that channel versus just let's just put this same exact thing in a robotic way everywhere, right? Like that's no fun and it doesn't really make sense. So strategically reusing this is going to be a big part of your strategy and a big way to make the most of your time resources that you're putting into content creation and pacing yourself.
Yeah, and blogs are a great opportunity to use a one-to-many distribution tactic on other channels. So you have your one blog post, but that doesn't mean that you have to do one social media post to promote your blog, right? So maybe you pull out 5 to 10 key points from that post that you did, and now you've got multiple weeks worth of content for your social
Mm-hmm.
media channels. So don't be afraid to sort of dissect it a little bit and pull out some bits and pieces that you can leverage in other ways.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you think about checking in to see if it's working? So you've pulled out some quotes and pieces from your long form content and you put them out in the wild on social media. How do you tell if it's working and you should continue trying to focus on that stuff?
Yeah, so we love to review the data. We love to look at the analytics from the platforms and looking at things like user engagement. How many people saw this post? How much reach did this post get? How many people clicked through to my website after seeing this post? How much, if you're doing video content, how much watch time did I get on a certain thing? Are people tending to watch 5+ minutes on this topic, but they're only watching 20 seconds on this
Mm-hmm.
topic? And sort of let that guide your future content development as well, because yes, the strategy needs to be put in place, but we're all about iterating based on the data that comes back. So, develop your strategy for the next month, but then take a look at your analytics, see what's working, and sort of let your audience be your guide. So, as we think about social media, and obviously there's a ton of platforms here, but sort of what is the broad recommendation if I'm a small business owner and I want to think about content pacing for social?
Sure. Okay. I say total beginners start with one a week. You can even scale back to one every 2 weeks or one a month as you're really in the beginning and you're just like, I want to look alive. I want my business to have credibility that it's real and we exist, but I am not ready to dive into this. And then once you get into a more rhythmic approach with your content creation, I'd say 2 to 3 times a week is probably reasonable. More than that, you're going to come across as like, hi, hi, hi. Um, but if you are just showing up occasionally with really hard hitting, valuable information, I think people appreciate that on a regular basis, a couple times a week.
Yeah, that seems about right. And you can sort of assume that if you put out 2 to 3 social media posts a week, it's not going to be the exact same group of people seeing it every time, right? It's going to be different every time, and people are on there at different times of day, and the algorithm is going to surface different things for everyone. So don't think that 2 to 3 times a week is being sort of too redundant or showing up too often, because the odds are really good that someone's only going to see every, fourth or fifth post that you do. So they might only be seeing you once every other week at a posting cadence of 2 to 3 times a week. So the more that you can put yourself out there, that's probably better. But again, always, always focusing on the quality of what you're putting out as opposed to just trying to hit a quantity goal. If 2 to 3 a week feels completely outside of the realm of possibility because you only have an hour a week to do this, just do once
Mm-hmm.
and you're good.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. And then I have a myth to dispel, or maybe you're going to validate it. Let's see. The more you post, the more quickly you become famous on the internet. True, false?
True-ish.
It
I
depends.
I can't guarantee you're ever going to be internet famous, and that's going to mean something different to everyone. But the more frequently you post, the easier and more quickly you can build an audience. I do believe that because you are going to be rewarded by the algorithms. More people are going to see your stuff, and just based on a pure volume standpoint, it's going to increase your chances of building on that platform. So it's sort of the equivalent of if I have an email list of 100 people and I have an email list of 1,000 people. Sending to 1,000 people is going to, in theory, be more effective than sending to my 100 people because I just have more eyeballs seeing it. So when
Hmm.
you post more frequently, you are likely going to build your audience more quickly. So if your primary goal with social media is just to build an audience as quickly as possible, then I would say yes, probably daily or multiple times daily posting is going to be rewarded by those platforms because they just want more people's eyes. And by creating the
Mm.
content, you're giving the algorithm exactly what it wants. But don't just, personal me being anti-social media, don't spend your whole life on these platforms because you will get sucked in. Your life is outside the phone. Friendly reminder.
Yes, that's it. See, this is how you know we're legit is like, hey, we do this for a living and don't do it at all. Do not use this. Big caveat asterisk. Don't get on social media, but if you're going to, here's how.
Yes,
Um,
and not to say you can't use it, but just be mindful. I mean, I've seen good people get sucked into this and then, let their validation come from strangers on the internet, and I don't want that for people?
mhm,
That's all I'm getting at.
totally agree. But what we do want for people is to increase their revenue, increase sales, find new customers, tap new audiences, and grow their business.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%, always. So do it, do
Okay.
as much as you need to, but not more.
Yes, yes. Okay, last one here is podcasts. What is the cadence if you're producing a podcast? Should you do it every day? Should you do it twice a day?
Probably not for podcasts. One of the big determinations here is going to be how long your podcast is. So I have seen some daily podcasts that are between 5 and 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And those, if you can make it work and you have an audience that's interested in that kind of update, of course, they tend to be news related or years ago, I was listening regularly to Laura Vanderkam, who's like a time management expert. And it was just sort of like a daily tidbit on how to manage your time and be more productive. And I did find them to be helpful, but I could only sustain listening to them for so long. So
That's a funny meta juxtaposition of like use some time every day to learn how to better use your time.
oh, we got to keep learning, don't we? So
Yeah.
it really depends on the format of your podcast. Obviously, if you're Joe Rogan, you can release like three-hour podcasts a week, and your audience is just going to eat them up because you're Joe Rogan. But if you're not Joe Rogan, which, hi, Joe Rogan, thanks for listening to our podcast. Um, then I
For
would
everyone
say
else.
for everyone else, probably once a week is sufficient. So we release once a week, and that feels like a really digestible cadence where we're like, okay, you got 30 minutes, turn us on in the car on your way home. We'll give you some good bit of knowledge that you can munch on for the next week, think about it, and then we'll be back in a week. I think any more frequently than that, and you're probably looking at episodes that are less than 30 minutes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Thoughts?
Or you're internet famous and or just like generally famous and people want to hear everything you have to say, which we're building to.
Yes. That is so true. And it really it comes down to audience demand at a certain point too. And if as you think across these different platforms that we've outlined, if you're getting a really great response, say from a podcast or on social media, maybe you lean into that a little bit more. Nobody's saying that you have to do a blog and a podcast and social media and regularly putting out email newsletters and campaigns. Like you can lean into the one where your audience is saying, "Hey, I want more of this." So if
Hmm.
that is Instagram and you're getting conversions and referrals to your website through that platform, if you're selling things through that platform and it's going really well, then deprioritize some of these other things for a little bit. Lean into what's working and put your content creation efforts into the platforms where your audience wants it.
Okay, and this just totally brings back the main thing is to keep the main thing of I think big bad marketing is strategy is at the bottom of all of this, but a strategy is a living document. It's constantly being iterated. The point is just you have a framework from which you are working and you're not just willy-nilly today I'm doing this, tomorrow I'm doing this, and then you forget all about that and you do something else next week and there's no rhyme or reason to it, right? The idea here is that you have some sort of structure in place to help guide your way. And it's intimidating to build that out, especially if you're like, what is this stuff that you're even talking about? And that's where we come in and we're like, we can help you build that strategy. The place is that you get to come in and pick which pieces you want to work on and what makes sense for your business.
Yeah. So content is ultimately a really important part of showing up in the digital world, but there are ways to do it intelligently that are not going to make you completely burn out and quit altogether.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that might be a good place to wrap. Thank you for
Yeah.
listening.
Get posting.
Hold on, I've fudged it up. I'll no. Okay. All right. I'll cut all this
Okay,
off the
now it's
end.
official. No, I think it's great. Keep it. Keep it. This is the interlude.
This is a one take podcast. Bye.